My last guest of the day is Dr. Sophie Chung, who is not only an entrepreneur who founded the healthcare tech startup Qunomedical here in Berlin, but is also a doctor of medicine. It seems like you like doing both things just so much that you just took both of them and you kind of created your own job. Can you briefly explain what your company does and where it helps patients? Mm-hmm. And we can talk about the other sides and factors later, but maybe we can start there.
Sure. I think my journey as an entrepreneur already started when I became a doctor. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that bugged me the most, even when I was a doctor, was the way patients are being treated in the healthcare system. And by that, I don't mean the medical treatment, but really kind of the human part of it. It's like, how does it make you feel to go into a hospital? Mm-hmm. Like, how much time does a doctor actually spend with you? Like, mm-hmm. where do you get your healthcare information and all of these things? And I was just thinking, this cannot be it. We are such a rich country, like, mm-hmm. you know, we are so developed, we can go to the moon. But when you look at how patients are being handled in the healthcare system, there's just so much room for optimization. Mm-hmm. And so I always had this constant bugging in me that this somehow needs to change. Mm-hmm. But like a decade later, this is when I then started my company, when I was like, okay, I'm gonna use technology and digitalization to improve the patient journey. Mm-hmm. But I can't improve everything at the same time because, I mean, patient journey is a big thing. It's like I need to pick one place in the patient journey that I want to start off with. And I thought the place where, you know, it's really, really important for patients to get it right is when you choose a doctor. Mm-hmm. Because I think when you choose the right doctor or the right hospital or the right treatment, mm-hmm. everything that comes afterwards will be good, or the likelihood of it will become really good. And if you can't do this in the best way, this is when, you know, when it becomes suboptimal, when mm-hmm. things go wrong. So I was like, okay, so it's the doctor discovery point that I want to fix. Mm-hmm. And so I started Qunomedical back in 2016, helping patients find the right doctor with a platform mm-hmm. that not only help patients find the right doctor locally, but internationally. Mm-hmm. Because the right doctor for you might not be the one next door necessarily. This mm-hmm. could be somebody in a different country, in a different city, on a different continent.
Mm-hmm. By the way, that's something that I do. I usually pick the doctor that's on the way to work from my house. So
and that has availability when you need it, right? So that's the number one criteria.
And they never do.
A doctor who will see me.
Yeah, correct. So how does that work? Let's say I break my leg mm-hmm. or something, then I come to you and I search for your services. And how does that work? Like, where do you start with the patient?
So I think, you know, the patient, so when you ask a hospital when the patient journey starts, their patient journey starts at the glass door, at the entry, in the way to the hospital, right? And we take the complete opposite approach, where we say the patient journey starts super, super, super early. Mm-hmm. A patient journey actually starts when a patient has some sort of healthcare problem mm-hmm. where they think they need care. Mm-hmm. So you broke a leg, but sometimes it's just pain or something like this, right? And this is when a patient starts to kind of take action mm-hmm. and wants to go see a doctor or starts go on the internet. And by now, over 70% of healthcare journeys start on the internet. This is where you go mm-hmm. and you start researching and you start to figure out, you know, where you want to be. And this is where we want to be. Right? And obviously, you know, that's a big thing, but we always say we want to go where the patient is. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, the patient is on the internet. Nowadays, the patient is on Google, on social media, and all these places. So this is really where we think, like, how can we actually meet the patient there by all the typical marketing efforts, mm-hmm. digital marketing efforts that we have organically and by paid channels to actually get them onto our platform and kind of continue interacting with them. So they come to our platform, they can search doctors, treatment categories, sometimes also prices if it's out-of-pocket payments. They can send in a request and say, hey, I'm interested in this and that. They can choose to interact with us either through email or not with anyone at all, but they can also choose to speak to a patient manager, because I think the human factor in healthcare is really important as well. And so we help them really navigate, you know, the different steps of actually then going to the doctor. So the end point is always either, you know, you find out you don't need anything or things get better, but typically the end point is actually going to a doctor in a physical way.
And you've shared with me before that one thing that's really important to you is that you don't want to charge the patient, since they're already paying for healthcare. So how do you at what point are you making money with that?
Yeah, so that's, I think, a really, really important point, and this is what I also always tell a lot of people who especially start a business in healthcare, is like really have your business model right and really figure out like where the money flows and where it goes and how you are actually going to make money yourself. And I think it's a tricky question, especially in healthcare. Because, you know, money flows in a weird way because there are insurance companies and all of these things. And but really, you know, and that's what I always say is like we're creating a win-win-win situation, because by creating a great patient experience, we are also improving the doctor experience because it's more efficient, more transparent, and all of these things. And at the same time, we're creating a win situation for us because we get to build an amazing business and a successful business. And this is how we think about this. And therefore, because we are creating a win situation, not just for the patient, but also for the doctors, this is where we go and actually charge. Because in the end, you know, our service is geared towards the patient. So our highest value in the company is patients first. But at the same time, we are also a service provider to the doctors and hospitals. And so I say, you know, we actually go where the money is, and the money is with the doctors and hospitals and the insurance companies, and this is where we charge.
And maybe we can talk about the product you kind of added later on in the journey, because that's exactly targeting the clinics and hospitals, Quno Suite.
Exactly. Yeah, so our second product is Quno Suite, and it's, as you said, a software or a software product for hospitals. We call it PRM, Patient Relationship Management, but think about it as CRM for hospitals, really. And what we help hospitals do is actually what we have, I don't want to say perfected, but what we have actually figured out in a very digital way is like, how do you interact with patients? How do you keep them and build a consistent patient journey, a consistent customer journey? And how do you actually get them to want to come to you? Because in the end, hospitals are also being run like a business, and for them, it also matters to, you know, get the right patients. And so, but we didn't come up with this by ourselves. You know, it wasn't like this one moment where it's like, maybe we can sell this to hospitals. It was actually the other way around, where the hospitals came to us. And there was, you know, one time where a hospital chain came to us, and they were like, hey, Quno, it's really great what you do kind of on the patient side of things, but this software you can do for the hospitals, we actually want to use it for our own patients because we've seen that it works so well. And so that was the first moment where we were like, do we want to sell software to hospitals? And my first reaction was, hell no. Like, hospital software business was like enemy number one for anyone who wants to bring innovation into healthcare. And I was like, I will never switch sides there. But then on the other hand, you know, and that's why I think it's so important to have your North Star to say, you know, why are you doing this? On the other hand, over the years, we've seen how challenging it was to reach patients all the time, and we are all kind of in marketing here, like, you know, being able to find the traffic and find those patients and convert every single patient every single day is great, but also very challenging if you want, like, our goal was to reach as many patients as possible. So we're like, how about we kind of do this through the back door, where we become the software solution for hospitals to actually manage their patient population. And through that, we get to help them define a better patient experience. And then all of a sudden, it made complete sense again for us to actually do it. And so we said yes to the first customer, and then actually established a full-blown B2B SaaS product out of it.
Healthcare is very interesting when it comes to it being a business or not being a business. I mentioned that I lived in the US, and you've worked at ZocDoc. which is an American company which is also helping in the healthcare space, finding doctors and appointments. Is healthcare a good place, an easy place to really be a business? Because in the end, maybe we can discuss the fact that healthcare should not first and foremost be something that's profitable, but that's helping people. And so maybe you can talk about how the tension is and how difficult that is and why you think differently, obviously.
Yeah, so, I think especially here in Germany or in Europe, being a profitable business is always being discussed in contrast to providing great patient services, right? So there's always this, profit-making, privately held hospitals are bad and we need to keep everything public and all of these things. And I have a completely, not a completely different view, but I have a more nuanced view on this. So let me say this. I think we in Europe, especially in contrast to the US, we are in a super lucky, privileged position to have a healthcare system that can serve all of the people and doesn't break the bank, right, for many people who require healthcare services. So when I'm sick, I go to the hospital, and all I think about and all I care about is to get better again. In the US, when you're sick, you go to the hospital, all you can think about is how much this is going to cost and on whether you need to sell your house and your car, right? And I think this is a fundamental difference, and we all have to be very grateful about the fact that we can get any CT, MRI, chemotherapy, whatever this is, in 99% of the cases without anyone even opening a checkbook or whatever. Right. However, I think we have a little bit of a schizophrenic situation, especially here in Germany or in Europe, where on one hand we tell the politicians tell the hospitals that they shouldn't be profit making, but at the same time you kind of let them run like a company, right? So the hospitals are getting a budget, they have costs, like personnel costs, doctor costs, nursing costs. The way they make revenue is by the number of patients they treat and the severity of the treatments and things like these. So at the same time, you tell the hospitals, you shouldn't care about this too much, but at the same time, you put them in the position where they do have to care about these things, because otherwise, they can't pay their people and all of these things, and can't offer the services that they have to offer. And I think that makes it very difficult to put the hospitals in this position. And I would rather be very open and transparent about this and say, yes, hospitals, you do need to care about your commercial structure, but we also give you the liberty to do more of this and really kind of compete on the quality and the service levels that you offer. Because right now for the hospitals, it's almost like and I see this when we go and speak to the hospitals, although the mindset is changing, they're like, why should we care? The patients are coming anyways, right?
They have to.
Because they have to. But when a patient actually has to come to you, it's too late. You want patients to come early. You want patients to actually look forward, taking care of their healthcare and all of these things. And I think this is where I really want to see or I wish there was some mindset change to say, hey, hospitals have to take in a somewhat commercial mindset, not completely, and the system doesn't allow us to do it anyways, but really think about patient services. Really think about, thinking about a customer experience in the terms of a healthcare experience. Also thinking about talent, right? Why doesn't it matter for hospitals to recruit the best doctors for themselves, just like any other company is trying to get the best talent for them, and all of these things. And I think a little bit of a more commercial mindset would really do good.
I asked Katharina the same question. What are the biggest difficulties in what you do? What are the roadblocks that might maybe sometimes seem too big to handle, that you spend a lot of time on, a lot of time talking about them, trying to solve them?
Everything. No, I think building a business, independent of what it is difficult, right? Let's just get this out of the way. It's very clear. But I think building a business in a highly regulated landscape, where also the stakeholders are throughout under digitalized, is even harder. And I think this is where we are, but at the same time, and it really depends on kind of how you think about difficulties, but I think if you succeed in a difficult environment, then your defensibility is also going to be really, really high, because it's going to be really hard for new people to enter the market, or for new people to scale, or kind of mediocre companies to come up and also just kind of buy their way through. So I actually like to be in a kind of difficult market, but really I think, you know, many of the things are difficult in terms of thinking about the product, because you know, as I said, it's under digitalized, so it's not like you can build an API and just plug into all the systems. Most of the healthcare IT systems don't have APIs. Also, the users, the doctors and the nurses, are typically not the most tech-savvy people, so you have to think about this. Then also, you know, the patient experience is a really difficult experience. It's not buying a pair of shoes. It's really, you know, a very anxious, vulnerable moment for every patient, and really getting this right is very challenging. And then also, of course, fundraising, going to investors and pitching this idea and making them believe, or convincing them that this is the next big thing, is, especially in digital health. When I started in 2016, wasn't necessarily a walk in the park either.
What made you start though? Like, what inside of you was something that said, I'm passionate about these at least two things, and I'm not going to make a decision. And I know that you've said that before in interviews, that obviously you think about still being a doctor and working in a hospital, and I'm assuming you might miss that sometimes. Maybe you would miss being an entrepreneur if you would do that. So how is that tension inside of you, and how is that actually contributing to what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I think the grass is always greener on the other side. And so when I nowadays walk into hospitals and then see all these doctors in their scrubs, I go like, I wish I could be one of them. But I know, you know, from my previous experience, how hard it is to actually be a doctor. And I think I'm in a lucky position where I can truly combine both of my passions, and kind of, you know, building a digital product, and at the same time doing this in the field of healthcare. For me, it wasn't clear that I will ever become an entrepreneur or start my own company. I started my career as a doctor, and then I went into management consulting and all these really nice places. But I think, you know, the point was really, I had this idea, I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then, you know, sometimes you have these moments in life where the stars align a little bit. And it was kind of, you know, I was still in New York, but I was thinking to come back. I had this idea that has solidified over time, over years, really. And thirdly, I had an investor who was willing to put money down pre-product, pre-market. So it was basically just me and my idea, and all of these things. And so I was like, if I don't think it's gonna get better than this. And then you just have to take the plunge and go like, I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
I love what you said about it was just me and my idea. When we talk about it, we often look for people telling us, yes, you're doing the right thing, and yes, that's wonderful. I'm assuming when you found a startup, there are a lot of people saying that's not a good idea, that's highly risky. How do you deal with the fact being the only person in the room who believes in your idea?
Yeah, so when you start a startup, I think you will find 100 times more people who tell you this is not going to work or say no than people who will say yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are people who will say yes to do it. Like, you know, my first investor or my first hires. And, you know, it's like you're not really by yourself all of the time, but of course it can become a mentally lonely place. I always say the customer is always right, the patient is always right. And I've said this over and over again, as long as we are building a product that patients use and patients love, we will keep going. And as long as we have somebody who's paying for it, we will keep going.
What would you say you have learned on the journey about yourself also as a person? What keeps you going? Where do you kind of hesitate? What's hard for you? Because it is, in the end, so much about personality and achievements in your personal growth.
I think there are many things that, or a couple of things that keep me going. I mean, building a company is tough, right? And I also think that there are actually more kind of dark moments than bright moments when you kind of count them, but of course the bright moments overshine the dark moments. Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like when you've found your purpose and your vision and you build something and you see that it works, every single day you improve. And I mean, what was a true game changer to me was when we received the first patient reviews, and patients were like, "This is amazing, this works." And another game changer for me was when so it's a digital product, right? So it's not something people have. But when I started meeting people who have actually used our platform and came up to me here in Berlin, and they were like, "Hey, I booked my treatment through your platform." I was like, "Holy shit! This is one of my customers." And also when other people start explaining your product to yourself and doing almost a better job than you do, this is when it's like, okay, it works. People understand, it makes sense, it adds value. And I think, what keeps me going are these proof points. It's not the one thing, but really getting up every single day, fighting through all the challenges and difficulties. And what we're trying to do is hard, and we feel it every single day. And I tell my team all the time. But at the same time, being really clear about the proof points that you're looking for, and finding them, and not kind of like sugarcoat them or make things up for yourself, but really try to find them in the data, in the truth, with your customers, and then keep building on that.
Where do you think that comes from? Are your parents entrepreneurs? Like, where does that mindset come from?
So I think the mindset comes from my parents, but my parents aren't entrepreneurs. I think my parents are as far away from being entrepreneurial as possible. I think my parents are from Cambodia. They came to Austria, where I was born, and grew up as refugees. And I think, what they've shown me when I grew up was kind of the grit and the resilience and the hard work you can put into something, so you can build something out of nothing. And basically my parents built kind of a whole existence and new life out of nothing when they came here. And at the same time, while working that hard and always having kind of a goal and a vision for yourself and your family, in this case, still remain humble and grateful for the things we have. And I think this is kind of a combination of things. And when I was growing up, I didn't know any of this, but reflecting back, I think this is what I learned from my parents. My parents are, my dad was a software engineer. My mom, they're both retired, worked in a lab, was a lab technician. So they're, typical jobs that are not entrepreneurial, but really, I think this resilience and being able to kind of, get yourself up again against a lot of challenges and all of these things. I think this is truly what is entrepreneurial.
You have a family of your own now. You have a daughter. What is something that you share with her that you really want her to take as a takeaway for her life? Because she's, I believe, 3 years old.
Yes.
So a lot to learn still.
My daughter is still very tiny and is only 3 years old. But really, I try to instill the confidence in herself. And I think especially with young women, but it doesn't really matter which gender, especially with all the information that flows in, that you get overwhelmed with social media, with the pressure that you grow up with, and all of these things where you almost can't be protected by it, or it's really hard to shield yourself from it. I think it's really, really important to stay grounded and to have the self-confidence and really know who you are and what you can and what your values are. So you always have this kind of inner North Star you can always turn back to, and are to a large extent independent of kind of external validation and superficial factors and all of these things. So I really try my best to kind of have a confident little person with me.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for sharing.
Thank you.